I think that that's what really completes the story with a theme. What really ends up making one merchant who uses our theme completely different from another merchant that uses our theme is the story that they're telling through their high quality photography.
Welcome to Honest eCommerce, where we are dedicated to cutting through the BS and finding actionable advice for online store owners.
I'm your host, Chase Clymer.
And I'm your host, Annette Grant.
And we believe running an online business does not have to be complicated or a guessing game.
If you are struggling to scaling your sales, Electric Eye is here to help. To apply to work with us, visit electriceye.io/connect to learn more.
And let's get on with the show. On this episode of Honest eCommerce, we talked to Sean Campbell, the project manager of Out of the Sandbox, about the Turbo theme. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Honest eCommerce. I am here with Annette Grant, my lovely co-host, and we're welcoming to the show today Sean Campbell, the project manager from Out of the Sandbox. Most of you should be familiar with Out of the Sandbox. They have quite possibly the best Shopify theme out there, the Turbo theme. So today we've got Sean, and he's going to share us some secrets on how to best utilize that theme. So Sean, quickly though, why should we listen to you?
Thanks a ton, Chase. Again, thanks for having me on the show. And why you should listen to me? Well, I'd like to think that I have seen my fair share of online stores in various states of repair, in various states of completion, and various states of success. So from my years with Out of the Sandbox, I've been a project manager here for a little over a year, but I've been involved with their support department since, I believe, 2014. And in that time, I have accessed thousands and thousands of Shopify stores to take a look at what's going on, to see what the best solution is for the query that they're sending into our support department, and to try to figure out the fastest track to success and to a complete setup for a high number of merchants. Before that, I was a project manager at another Shopify agency at Pointer Creative, also doing the support component for Out of the Sandbox. I've been making video documentation for Out of the Sandbox products now for a number of years. So I'd like to think that I'm quite sort of fluent in this ecosystem. I have met many partners, many merchants, and have just seen so many stores that I'd like to think that I know a thing or two about a thing or two.
No, I'm just kidding. You definitely know more than I do about Turbo, which is saying a lot. I'll let our listeners kind of behind the veil. Every custom store we build is based on the Turbo theme. So you guys can, if you want to work with us and you want to get a step ahead, just install Turbo and you save us 20 minutes work.
And disclaimer, I also use the Turbo theme because Chase, of course, helped me with my shop. So I'm a big fan.
Just hearing that from you two individually is just so inspiring to hear that this is sort of your jumping off point for any of your custom builds, is that you turn to Turbo knowing that it's this solid product that has a high capability for being customized, whether it's with what we offer with the built-in settings or with what you offer with your customization services. So great to hear that any agency, any freelancer is using Turbo as sort of their jumping off point, as well as hearing about our merchants who are sort of doing it themselves and are able to use the built-in components of Turbo to get all set up.
Yeah, I would just like to point out, and the reasoning behind why we use Turbo is, A, the customer support is amazing. You're not reinventing the wheel with anything you're selling online, and I guarantee that someone Out of the Sandbox has had your question come up before, and they've got documentation on how to help you out there. But B, we believe in agility and being quick to market and custom developing. You guys, out of the box, it's like 95% of all of the stuff you're going to need for an online store. Work smarter, not harder. Like, let's not custom code that. Let's get a base in there and then let's reskin the cat and make it look and feel how we want.
You're totally on point, Chase. And I mean, you nailed it with saying that we're not really reinventing the wheel. I know that might be contrary to the name Out of the Sandbox, but I'd like to think that we're not really doing anything that's too crazy and out there. We're just offering highly flexible options for best practices in e-commerce. And that's what we see when we look at the Turbo theme. None of it seems to be wild and crazy, but all of it is exactly what you would expect as a shopper and exactly what you'd expect as a merchant Then with all of the settings that you would need to hopefully tweak it into what you have in mind as far as functionality or as far as appearance. And if not, then you can reach out to an agency such as your own to have this adjusted to suit.
Yeah, and I just also kind of want to go on record here. Well, I'm not being paid by out of the sandbox to boast Turbo. It's our honest opinion. It's what we use for the small to medium sized business. That is a fantastic starting point. Once you start getting to medium and enterprise and up there, that's when custom is king. Like you need to all of those milliseconds matter when you're load times with your website, and that's a whole different conversation. But for most SMBs, Turbo is gonna do you justice.
Again, you're completely on point, Chase. And I feel that a merchant's own self-awareness with where they are in the ecosystem as far as the size of their business, what's necessary as far as customization to their storefront is a good thing to know. It's a very good thing to know for your own budget. Is this something that you could take care of completely on your own using a fully featured theme with a ton of settings? Or is the level of expectation that you have to the degree that you should have somebody handling all of these things on your behalf, whether they're small tasks from small task experts or whether they're larger full builds from an agency?
And for our listeners, before I switched to the Turbo theme, I had a list of probably like 100 changes I needed to make to my old theme. And instead of paying a developer to do all of that, we just made the theme switch, and that list got thrown away and we never had to look back. And they were things that I thought should have been inherent and just there in my other theme, and they weren't. So they weren't huge, big changes. They were things that I just knew that my customer was looking for. So yeah, I mean, hours, thousands of dollars just wiped out by simply purchasing the theme. So thanks again
That
for
puts
that.
a huge smile on my face. And to tell you the truth, I want to see that list of 100 things.
I still have it in my Slack. So I can go back and show you. So
And we'll add
documentation
it
of
to
what it took me.
our turbo sales pitch. We'll just add those 100 points. Yeah.
There we go.
Cool. So I believe that at this point, someone listening is like, I'm gonna check out Turbo, see what it's about. But what can a Shopify merchant expect when they're kind of switching over to Turbo?
Sure thing. I would imagine that if you are already, I find it unlikely that someone will hear about the Turbo theme if it's their first day being involved in the Shopify platform. It's not necessarily even marketed to people who are just discovering the Shopify platform on its own. This is really something for people who have figured out the platform maybe a week in. Maybe they've toyed around with one of the free themes that Shopify offers and sees what's possible with the platform, what the difference is between the platform itself and the theme that you're running on it, and then start to get ideas of what else would I like this storefront to be able to do? How else would I like it to look? What other functionality would I like to add? And it's in that questioning that you would discover the premium theme market. And I would hope that you would also discover the Turbo theme at that point. And what you would discover after running the trial or after installing Turbo, I would say the most apparent thing would be the number of settings. That there are far more settings than you would expect in a theme if you've taken a look at a number of themes, and far more settings than what you'll see in a Shopify free theme. And this is really to add in that flexibility that we're talking about, that once you look at your store and you're making this list of things that you'd like changed, that you'd like adjusted, well, then you can take a look at the Turbo settings and find that most of those ideas are already accounted for with something that you can enable or disable or configure in a certain way. So the settings, first and foremost, would be what you would notice differently about the Turbo theme. As I mentioned, not reinventing the wheel as far as how it's presenting your Shopify content, but high levels of flexibility in the way the homepage is set up and the way the product page, collection page is set up as well. I'd say, though, that after sort of scratching the surface a little bit with the theme and discovering some of the even more in-depth special features, for instance, our dot details templates are some components of the Turbo theme that are sometimes missed in the first experiments with the Turbo theme, but are highly powerful templates that are far removed from what the regular page template and what the regular product template can do. And what we've done with these dot details templates is created a way that in the Shopify settings editor, you can add and remove various content blocks, whether they be images, passages of text, to specific pages and to specific products. This is usually done with fairly static settings, whereas we have added these .details templates so that you have full control over a certain portion of your product page, over a full page template to sort of reposition elements as you choose and make a far more robust presentation of your brand. Besides that, I would say that like these would be the sort of the settings and the configuration components that would be immediately apparent to merchants as they install Turbo. But then how that will impact the merchant's customers is it would be in sort of the speed and the efficiency with which they operate that online store. So there's such a focus on a speedy checkout flow and in efficient navigation that everything is just available in the position that you would expect for it to be available. And the number of steps that it takes to go from the homepage to the checkout is completely minimized to allow for as few blockers as possible within that process. So just to name a few, as far as navigation goes, the main menu being a major, major component of any online store, our Turbo theme has a mega menu component built into it without any need for additional applications to be installed that allow for main menus that have drop downs with images, multiple menus taken from the navigation settings in Shopify, additional content if you'd like, to just make a highly robust drop down, the type that you've seen on some of your favorite online stores that are sort of full builds. Besides that, I'm sure that a number of your guests have discussed the importance of searching and filtering in the online store experience. And to address that, we've added a multi-tag filter to the Turbo theme, sort of the first of its kind within a theme itself. There have been apps that can do multi-tag filtering for a number of years. Well, we've added that capability directly to the Turbo theme to sort of save you from having to search for an app to add to the theme, to save you from having to search for someone to add that app to the theme. It's all sort of included along with our predictive search feature. So as many, many merchants notice, the Shopify search feature is often leaves a little bit to be desired. It has straight up search, but it doesn't necessarily do the predictive component that is expected by a lot of shoppers. So to combine that predictive search with the multi-tag filtering component and a robust mega menu, you have your navigation, filtering, and searching all taken care of using built-in features as opposed to any features that need to be added afterwards. So
Awesome.
those would be, I guess, my first impressions, the first impressions I would like a merchant to have whenever they're accessing the Turbo theme for the first time.
Do you normally see increased conversions like within the first month of people switching over to the Turbo theme? Is that something that's pretty easy to pinpoint for your customers?
It is not on our side as
Okay.
far as the number of people that have the Turbo theme out in the wild and being able to reach out to them to get that data from them. That's unfortunately not something that we have on the go right now. But anecdotally, we hear from people all the time about how Turbo, and to say that it adjusted their conversion is scratching the surface. Turbo changed my life or changed my online store. It changed my branding. It changed the way that my business is being presented to the world. And with that, we would like to think that their conversions are also moving up and to the right, as it is said, especially with the expedited checkout flow that you can get from the homepage to the checkout now in a number of ways with an individual click. For instance, having the dynamic payment buttons enabled on a featured product on your homepage would allow somebody to progress directly to the checkout without any additional steps. Now, this particular section is becoming more and more standard in Shopify themes, but understand that we're one of the first to have this as a feature on the homepage and continue to look for ways that we can expedite the checkout flow, even though we have it now down to just the one click.
I kind of want to chime in here and discuss having all of those features built into the theme and what advantage that helps you with. Having any feature you can custom build in, but starting with a theme that has that built in, the reasoning behind why that's awesome is A, you don't have to pay for a developer to do that. B, out of the Sandbox has QA'd like quality assurance this theme to death. Whereas, if you have a developer custom code you a particular feature, it may not work. well with some of your plugins. Down the line, it might break. You might find something weird. And when you're using a premium theme, the updates to that theme are going to fix any of those issues for free with your license. Whereas some developers won't do those changes for free. If it's some error with the code or you install a new app that breaks it.
Completely correct, Chase. I mean, that's one of the motivators for adding. Sorry, I say one of the motivators, three of the motivators for baking these features directly into the theme. The cost of an app would be the most obvious issue that it addresses, in the sense that you wouldn't need to be first searching for an app that has that functionality. You'll be faced with maybe a dozen that offer similar functionality, and you're already using your own time to assess between these apps which one is most appropriate for that functionality that I have in mind. Then you find the one that seems to check all of those boxes. You install it onto your apps panel with potentially a monthly fee associated with it. You cross your fingers that it is completely compatible right out of the box, but all of that testing is happening on the merchant's end. If a problem arises, which unfortunately with the app and theme adventure, issues eventually arise as far as compatibility goes, to then suss out who is the correct support department to reach out to. Both support departments will forward your request to the opposite support department, and you'll be caught in this badminton match between an app developer and a theme developer. Just the headaches that come from implementing apps for a particular functionality. If we see that functionality as being something that is just being requested and requested and requested, either through app installs or through what we hear on support, then it is a prime candidate for something that will be baked directly into the Turbo theme. And then for some of the more popular features that go into the Turbo theme that we see a high amount of success with, eventually trickle down into the rest of our catalog as well, which is available on the Shopify theme store. So between, the cost, compatibility, figuring out who's going to solve these problems whenever they arise, those are all sort of solved in one fell swoop by adding app-related functionality to the theme itself. We do the quality assurance, like you said. We're the support department to reach out to if anything is going wrong with these features. And that is all included in the one-time cost of the theme. So it just really checks all of those boxes, and we're always on the hunt for that next feature that we can bake into the theme to, in a sense, save somebody from going down the app rabbit hole. Now, I do want to give a ton of credit to our friends in the app ecosystem. There's so much that apps can do that themes cannot. And for any of the features that I just mentioned that are baked into the theme, if you were looking to do something slightly different with it, if you were looking for further flexibility on that feature, then perhaps an app would be the right way to go. And you would have sort of a more fully featured version of that feature. But if you're looking for the straight up mega menu, the straight up multi-tag filter, if you want to have products suggested on your cart page, these types of things, then check out what the built-in version is like in the Turbo theme and potentially save yourself a lot of time and headaches.
For our listeners that are not on either Shopify or potentially are on a free theme, can we just explain to them, the fee based here, and that it's a one-time charge, correct, Sean, for the Turbo theme?
That's correct, yes.
And then any updates that come out, those are free also, correct?
Yes, we do a year of free updates on Turbo.
Okay.
As far as that goes, yes. And we also have the first of its kind theme updater app, which I would be remiss not to mention to this audience. But we know, app installations being a pain point for theme customers, that pales in comparison to the pains that come from updating a theme on Shopify. The Shopify theme updating process involves taking a fresh copy of the theme, installing it on your themes panel, and starting over. There is no way of really carrying over your past setting configurations to the new version. If you've had code modifications happen to that version, they will need to be reapplied to the new version as well. So it takes a lot of time, potentially some technical prowess as well, to go through the conventional updating process on Shopify. So we have created an app that gets installed on the Shopify apps panel that will look through the themes that you have on your themes panel, identify any out of the sandbox themes. Also, this works with pixel union themes. And it will automatically add the most recent version of that theme to your themes panel. and it will detect all of your setting configurations and have them applied automatically to the new version of the theme. It will even attempt to detect all of the code modifications that have happened to your previous version and then attempt to apply that to the new version of the theme as well. So if people have maybe just a few customizations, especially those that are just part of the style sheet, those will automatically transfer over to that new version of the theme to hopefully retain all of your setting customizations and then all of your additional code modifications as well, to hopefully address that updating pain point and to show that there is sort of this better way, this other way of doing it that isn't quite as manual. So thanks for letting me get that plugin for the theme updater app. A very helpful tool that's saved time for merchants all over the place.
Yeah, that app is amazing. It's so frustrating the original way, which I've dealt with a million times. So hopefully all the other theme houses get on board out there. But
that means a lot coming from you, Chase, just because if it's for custom builds, we might not necessarily suggest using the theme updater app if there have been in-depth, widespread modifications to the code. A lot of that would just need to be carried over manually anyway. You can still run an update for sure, and it will still do as many of the automatic processes as it can. But if there are drastic changes between the version that's being updated and the default version, you're almost just as far along to do the manual version or the manual updating process. So to hear that you guys are able to leverage it to some degree on your end is great to hear. Really nice to hear.
I will be very honest here. Our custom clients are kind of SOL on that, but the ones that we're just using Turbo and helping them set it up the right way for conversions, those they can push a button, everything's fine. But yeah, once you start getting custom, it's kind of more manual. And we look at what is changing with the new update and taking that into consideration. Is it worth venturing down that rabbit hole to update?
For sure. And that's the process that the app is almost trying to do algorithmically. And as you know, of the challenges of sort of identifying what was the purpose of this customization originally? Does the update address that purpose? Does this really need to be reapplied? There's a lot of sort of human logic that's still involved in that portion of the updating process. So if the app can get smarter and smarter over time, so be it. But you're right, for big custom builds, the app wouldn't get you too far.
Support for our podcast comes from our friends at Simpler, a new way to staff 24/7 sales and customer service on your e-commerce store. It works with your existing email and chat platforms, so setup is quick and easy.
Simpler's network of on-demand, US-based Simpler specialists are standing by to answer your customers' most common questions. Set it up for free today and then turn it on or off depending on your customer volume. You only pay $2.25 for every resolution. No hidden fees, contracts, or minimums.
Close more sales with Simpler by staffing your email and live chat around the clock with Simpler specialists.
Start your free 7-day trial at simpler.ai/honest. That's simpler.ai/honest. I've got a fun question here. So you as a project manager, and I'm sure that you've overseen a lot of support requests coming in. What are some of the top requests that you hear coming in about, the Turbo theme?
A lot of them would be, I would say that a lot of support requests that we receive are looking to do what people would be reaching out to your agency to do, or what people would be reaching out optimally to a small task expert to do. And these would be things that are just slightly out of the bounds of what the built-in settings are able to do. And we love to receive those tickets because we do want to detail for these merchants what their next best option is with the built-in features, but then also provide for them a reference to some of our favorite small task experts that can take a look at their more particular queries. So that's a lot of the support we receive are unfortunately out of scope questions that regard things that the built-in settings can't do right now, but we often take them also as feature requests. We sort of we create an issue with that feature, and we start adding any tickets that are requesting that feature. We add them as references to, in a sense, have our merchants vote on these features and then qualify them for our subsequent updates. So we're very happy to receive those queries, even if we're not able to address them directly. Besides that, there are app conflicts seem to be one that comes in fairly often. Often people will have an older app installed that could be reinstalled and resolve all of their issues. But the first stop is often our own support department. And then we hopefully can identify what app or what change is conflicting with the default operation of the theme and then direct them to the correct department as such. Besides that, so yeah, customization requests, a lot of app related questions. But what we're finding less and less are questions in regards to the actual setup and operation of the theme. And I think that might be a testament to our documentation and our videos that we have out there that hopefully walk people through all of the in scope possibilities with the theme and answer their questions sort of before they have written into our support department. If they're writing in with a question that is something that's explained in our documentation, we love to provide that documentation. And at that point, they have access and an eye on answers to other questions they might potentially have. So that's what we would love to have coming into our support department are in-scope questions about the built-in settings and features of the theme. But because those are all being addressed proactively with our documentation and with our video support, we don't get as many of those questions, and the questions we receive are often looking for a different place to direct the question, whether it be a small task expert, Shopify themselves, or up to an agency.
So, if you could try to help educate our listeners, what would be a way to kind of understand the difference between in scope slash out of scope with the requests that come in? And let me rephrase that question. What would be, maybe an example or an identifier of a task that, wouldn't be, you wouldn't be able to help with it, out of the sandbox, and that you would need to kind of hire out an expert in the field?
Sure thing. I think one sort of topic that would be prevalent in that sense would be anything that needs to be changed about one particular product or one particular link. All of these themes are sort of set up using templates. So all of the products that you have on the Shopify platform would be using one of a few various product templates. So if you want this is totally a random example, but you'd like the product title of one of your products to appear in purple, whereas all the other product titles you want to appear in blue, there is no way within the built-in theme settings to target that one product individually to change the color of that one product title wherever it happens to appear on the site. So this would be something quite specific. So something that it's often that the merchant has thought about it or thought it up, come up with this idea themselves or read about it on a blog somewhere, and then reach out to say, hey, can I change this one thing, this one possible way? A good way for them to qualify that themselves would be to explore through the theme settings. That if it's possible with the theme settings, that's ultimately the solution. And if it's not possible with the built-in theme settings, then it's likely out of scope. But as I said, we love to receive those questions to suss it out, see if there's the next best solution that we can offer within the product itself, and then provide a reference for deferring the question to a small task expert. So I would say that the more familiarity that you have with the settings of the theme and how the theme is set up, the more familiarity you would have with what we would consider in scope and out of scope. We have a fairly robust support policy as well that can sort of define what we consider in and out of scope, but we would never want that to discourage somebody from writing in so that we could still give them the next best answer.
That's a fantastic answer. So, looking out, we're recording this in January of 2019. I hope it's out in February. We've got a few in the can now. But so looking out for 2019, what would you say are some tips that you want to give merchants to get the best out of Shopify this year?
Absolutely. And first, congratulations on getting this many episodes taped in a hurry. Can't wait for this one to be out in the wild. As far as tips for 2019, I feel that some of them we've discussed as far as having your navigation, filtering, and search as configured components that are ready to go, that you're happy with how they appear. But I think I've got two other points that can set you up for success in 2019. I believe listening to Kurt give us a talk in your first episode, the importance of an email newsletter pop-up to capture the opt-ins, to capture those email addresses of interested customers. As I discussed on Kurt's podcast, on Kurt's live chat, I personally don't like pop-ups, but that's because we access sites all day long and pop-ups really just get in the way. Whereas shoppers are actually interested in getting this additional information and the reviews are in. Their data is out there of how effective pop-ups are for capturing email addresses. Besides having a pop-up though, to have other opportunities throughout the experience on the site where the shopper can enter their email address, I think is important. And the Turbo theme itself, as you load up the homepage, you could be presented with the newsletter pop-up. But additionally, you can also have a section of the homepage contain an additional newsletter sign-up field. And then finally, the footer as well can contain that newsletter sign-up field. So sort of this three-pronged approach to capturing email addresses right from the initial engagement with the storefront. So that I think to have all of those enabled and configured could potentially capture more and more email addresses, which is the front end of your email marketing campaign that I figure that anyone listening to this is already tuned into. I don't have any advice for what you want to do with your email marketing campaign, but as far as capturing those addresses, the Turbo theme and our whole catalog actually has the capability of grabbing those email addresses from multiple locations on the homepage. So prevalent newsletter signups would be a tip for the new year. Then finally, this one is just a classic tip. I think I've been saying this from before Turbo was out in the wild, before our artisan theme was out in the wild, is the importance of high quality photography. This would apply to your product images as well as your lifestyle images or your banner images, that the theme is already designed, it's already developed, and now it's up to you. I hate to use the term, it's yours to lose, but now it's just up to you to add in the best photography that you have. And now all of your Shopify content will be displayed optimally in a way that has been sort of best practice tested, in a way that isn't reinventing the wheel, but is giving shoppers exactly what they expect as far as navigation, searching, filtering, and buying. I would triple down on your photography initiative, whatever you can do to get your product and your essence. I mean, we call it the branding, but it's really, what are you trying to get across? What do people want to be whenever they get your thing? Well, that's what your lifestyle photography is trying to show them, is like, this is what you want to be. If you want to be this, buy this thing, and you can buy it right here from the homepage. So I think that that's what really completes the story with a theme. What really ends up making one merchant who uses our theme completely different from another merchant that uses our theme is the story that they're telling through their high quality photography.
Yeah, I have had a few projects come along where we were using Turbo to help them along the way, and we'd have to put it on pause and say, we need to do a photo shoot here. Because it doesn't matter how amazing the website design is, if the photography is subpar, your website is subpar. It's there's no way to fake it.
Completely right. And if you're to look at even custom builds that don't start with a particular theme as their jumping off point, if you were to break down what is this site without the high quality photography, you would notice that it has not reinvented the wheel, that the menu is exactly where you thought it would be. We've got things in a 3-up layout. It's responsive. None of this stuff is that far-fetched whenever we look at custom builds compared to themes. What makes it stand apart is the photography and how the photography is implemented with the theme or with the custom build.
Yeah, and if we just take a step back from that, like the goal here with this web design, Shopify using Turbo, not using Turbo, custom site, doesn't matter. The goal is to sell something. And the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Targets, those giant, behemoths that are selling stuff all day long, they are training people how to buy online. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. You don't want your website to be so different. People are going to get there, get confused. You're going to lose sales. So, in a sense, you want to go with the flow. And then, secondary to that is tell your brand story with high quality photography. Obviously, there's a million other ways to do that. Videography, your About Us page, what you guys are doing on social can help with that story. But as far as the functionality and that user experience on your site, if you're drifting further and further away from what these big companies are doing, your conversions are also going to start going down.
And we'd like to think that if you're swaying away from the built-in components of the theme, that you're often going down unknown territory as well. I mean, there's such a robust app environment that there's a lot of very appropriate additional functionality, but whatever it is, we want to hear about it because we'd like to have that as part of your merchant experience when using the theme and then have that translate to the shopper's experience. And that's one thing, I mean, for the audience listening now, like you look at your site more than anybody will ever look at it. And you may compare your site to another site, or you may compare it to another site using the same theme as yours and start to, oh, this looks very similar to their version of this, or this is kind of looking like, well, just understand that shoppers do not experience e-commerce in the same way. Shoppers do not stare at sites for hours on end, making these qualitative comparisons. They're looking to assess whether or not they want to buy a product and then proceed with that purchase. And to really narrow it down to those basic steps and put yourself directly into the shopper's perspective as opposed to the merchant perspective that we're thinking about all the time. You know, how's our product going to be used by the merchant? What's the merchant going to think of our job here? Well, let's think about what they should be thinking about. And that's the shopper's perspective on all of this stuff. And it's really about getting your product and your story front and center with a way of purchasing it immediately. And if you keep your eye on the prize that way, you can save yourself a ton of additional work and additional effort in trying to customize something into what your mind's eye would like to see for your site. Maybe take it down a notch to what would your shopper want to see from this site and how can your shopper most effectively buy this product. So that's just my little rant about customer perspective and how we often forget about what it's actually like to be an online shopper when we stare at websites for hours and hours a day.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head there. And I think that if you're thinking about redesigning your website, and I don't want to call anybody out here, this has not happened. So don't take this personally if you think it sounds like you. But if you like, you're in your gut, you're like, I want this custom, beautiful website. We need, that's the wrong way to think about it. What does your customer want? What does your customer need? Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are making the purchases.
Totally right. And I mean, there are definitely types of businesses or types of entrepreneurs that are looking to create an artful masterpiece of a storefront. And there are definitely agencies out there to help you with that kind of thing. But to think that that correlates necessarily with converting is a conversation that you may want to have with with your team or with whomever you're in business with, because that's, yeah, the focus should be on selling this product, not necessarily winning an award for beautiful website of the year.
Absolutely. All right, Sean. So I think we've danced around it. Turbo is one hell of a theme.
I'm glad to hear it and glad to hear that you guys are using it as this jumping off point. I'll put in a plug for the future. We are creating a theme that is working on the same flexibility concept that we've added to Turbo to allow it to be this jumping off point. We are definitely doubling down on that approach with our next theme to have it as a highly, highly flexible, almost a builder of themes, something that can be used by agencies and merchants alike. Agencies to use it as this jumping off point, or for merchants themselves to almost make themselves into a little agency with all kinds of options for configuring the layouts and the general templates of the storefront. So we're really looking forward to that in the first part of this year. We'll have a new theme hopefully taking over the market. And it's definitely working off of what we're hearing from agencies like your own, as far as the flexibility, the prototyping tool that Turbo has become. It started as a performance-focused theme with flexibility, but now it's turned into a flexible prototyping tool with this added benefit of having very high performance statistics. So we're going to continue down that path of offering flexibility as the main proposition of our products.
If I could put a bug in your ear for 2 requests that I'd like to see, or 1, because 1 would work just fine. As an agency, if we could see Turbo or just any of the themes that you guys bring to market in the future, if we could have the availability as partners to get either the sketch files or like a PSD, oh my gosh.
I thought you had 2 requests.
Well, they're different files. There's 2 different files there.
Got it.
Just one of them will work for me though.
I've taken notes. And that is definitely in the cards for this agency related theme, to have as much documentation available for developers and for agencies such as your own, to be able to really get into the guts of the theme and do with it what you wish. Whatever's not already, in a sense, built into it, we would still like that process to be even more accessible for our developer friends.
That is amazing. I am excited. I'm not going to hold you to it, but what? How long are we talking?
Well, I'm not sure if you're going to be at Unite this year, but we hope to be at Unite and we hope to have great news there.
We will absolutely be at Unite. It's one of our
Fantastic.
favorite that Shopify puts on. Let's be real. If it's close to us, we're going. We go to all the events.
You get to come visit us up here in Canada.
Absolutely. I love it up there. Alrighty. And Annette, before the show, Annette made this happen while I was dealing with technical difficulties. But with that being said, is there any specific, discount code or link or anything that you want to shout out about?
Absolutely. For your listeners today, we have a special discount code. It's Honest eCommerce, all one word, the name of the podcast. And that will get you a 20% discount. It applies to the Turbo theme specifically, as we can't do the same type of discounting on themes that are also available on the Shopify theme store. And with the premium status of Turbo, it's available specifically on outofthesandbox.com. And you can use the Honest eCommerce, all one word, discount code for 20% off of that title.
Awesome. I can't thank you enough for being on the show. If our customers want to reach out directly to you, how do they find you online?
Sure thing. I believe I'm Sean P.H. Campbell on Twitter would be a decent way of getting in touch for sure. Additionally, Sean at outofthesandbox.com if you wanted to send me an email that is not support related. Be fairly specific that you'll get faster, better service if you submit your support request through our normal channels.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
It was really my pleasure. Shout out to Pixel Union. Shout out to the unofficial Shopify podcast and Kurt Elster, Ether Cycle, Mike at Shopify, StoreTasker, Blend, Spently. All of our friends had to give that quick shout out, of course.
No problem. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks for having me on the show, guys.
We can't thank our guests enough for coming on the show and sharing the truth. Links and more will be available in the show notes. If you found any actionable advice in this podcast that you'd like to apply to your business, please reach out at electriceye.io/connect.
Please make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast app of choice.